how you live your life is creative. How you relate to information, how you decide to tell a stranger a story on the train, how you see the world around you. I just really, really believe there are a million creative choices in a day outside of just like the arts as we understand and know them. And people just don't really give themselves enough credit for the already creative ways in which they are living their life.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of From the Magic Pencil, Voices of Writing Through. I'm really, really excited to talk to our next guest, who is an amazing person, an amazing woman, and one of the most creative people I know. And I've known her a very long time. I've known her basically her whole life. And I've seen her grow into an incredible woman, an incredible artist, a musician, a dancer, a visual artist, a businesswoman. I just have so much to talk to her about. So now I'd like to introduce Lizzy Plapinger, otherwise known as LPX. Hi, Lizzy.
Hi, Sue. Thank you so much for having me. This is such a treat, especially to be with you. I feel like you and I have always had such a creative connection for our entire lives. We've always been, I feel like, tethers for one another. And yeah,
Thank you.
this is very special. When you asked me if I wanted to do this, it was such an easy yes, because creativity and being creative is kind of like my favorite conversation to have.
Yeah, yeah. And I have to say, I was a little nervous about asking you because you're so busy and you do so many things and you have a huge following and a big public persona. So I'm, thrilled that you're lending this time to writing through.
For you, always.
Thank you.
Anything and always, forever and ever.
Great. Okay, well, why don't we just start with maybe you kind of giving a little bit of a bio of
Yeah.
where you started, all the different kind of changes you've made in your life so far, and then we can
Yes,
get into more
it's been
details.
many. Well, I'm currently a 35-year-old woman who lives in New York City, but I'm born and raised in London. And from a creativity perspective, grew up wanting to be a dancer. I think that was like the first medium I really fell in love with. That was really my first connection to, I think, creativity within myself. And spent my entire life growing up in England, went to school for what I thought would be dancing and maybe studio art. And in the process of going to college in the States for the first time, I went to Vassar in Poughkeepsie. I ended up getting sort of immersed in the music world from the business side. I had a radio show and I booked shows and I started a record label out of my dorm room with a childhood best friend, which led me to put sort of dance and visual art on the back burner and do the label full time. So I graduated and did the label. And then from the label, I started secretly making music. Then I released the music and became a band. That was a part of a project called Miss Mister. We put out 2 albums on Columbia Records and toured the world for 6, 7 years. Then I split from Miss Mister and started a solo project called LPX. And I've done that for the past, 5, 6 years. And in the past 2, 3 years, that project, which started as a musical project, has really expanded into more of a holistic artistic project where I'm really trying to merge more into multi-mediums. And I've been doing much more in design and furniture and painting. And so I have moved around quite a bit within the scope of my life and kind of had my hands in a lot of different creative pots and feel very grateful to now be at an age and in a city where it doesn't feel so odd to be mixing all these things together. I think I feel what maybe a lot of us feel, which is you feel like you need to put yourself in a box as one thing for people to understand who you are. And as we get older, you become a more dynamic human being and you want to be all the things at once. And I think it's kind of a really special thing within the scope of 2023 and New York City specifically. I feel like there's more and more space and encouragement to be all of those things at once. And I am in a place in my life for the first time where I'm getting to bring all the pieces and parts of me that I've always loved together for the first time. And I'm sure that's only going to expand and escalate, as I get older. I'm really excited about getting older and look forward to all the mediums I have yet to fall in love with. I think that if my past is any indication of my future, It's going to be a lifelong relationship to creativity through a variety of different mediums. And I'm excited about that because the more I fall in love with a new medium, the more it gives me appreciation for something that I previously had a relationship with or currently do. So that's a long answer, but that's that's the best quote unquote short bio I can give.
That's great. And it's already brought up a lot of questions. And the first one that pops up is
Mm,
that very often you see people who have gone from being actively in the arts, either singing or dancing or painting or whatever, and then they move that into business.
yes.
And it's very unusual to find someone who starts with the business and then becomes the artist. Is there a way that your work and your development of Neon Gold, not only working in
Hmm.
producing music, but actually creating a
Hmm.
label, then helped you move into the next aspect, which was you becoming the singer yourself?
Absolutely. It is funny. It feels like a little bit of a pattern in my life that I tend to do things a little bit backwards. And it's interesting that I started on the label side and I'm such a earnest and loud champion of the things and people and places that I love. It has always been one of my greatest pleasures and like continues to be one of my greatest pleasures to champion the arts and different people's talents who I think deserve attention. So with the label, it was so easy to basically turn what I was already doing into a business where I just, my favorite thing was to turn people onto their new favorite music. I don't think I took myself seriously as a creative around the time that we started the label. I think that doing the business side, I think in hindsight, I see that it was a little bit of a life crutch. I think for me to dip my toe into a creative ether and that community and feel like I could participate as a supporter, but not necessarily as a peer. And actually, in the process of doing the label, the more I connected with other artists, the more I realized that I actually spoke the same language as these people. And more it felt like tribe, which is so interesting because even once I started doing the music myself, I took enormous pleasure in taking everything I had learned from Neon Gold in terms of PR plans and single campaigns and how to run a release. We were given an enormous amount of autonomy as a band when we first started, way more than bands are often given, certainly then. And it was really powerful. I could put into practice everything I had already learned firsthand. And I was sitting at the table and in meetings at the time at Columbia that most artists never get to engage with. That to me was a huge confidence boost. And I think I really wore the badge of being able to be on the business and creative side at the same time as such a badge of honor. I wasn't like your normal artist. I could do both. I was grounded in the reality of what it meant to run a business. And that was powerful. And I think not dissimilarly now, I feel like I'm doing things a little backwards where, as you get older, people do often move from taking creative risks and artistic chances to maybe settling down and going to the business side and doing something that's a little bit more structured or grounded. And I actually feel like the older I'm getting, the more I'm running away from that. And the more I feel like I feel compelled to make more risks and chances in my art and with my life. By the time this airs, I'm leaving the record label. I've been doing it for 15 years and it's helped me grow into who I am. But I feel like I'm ready to take all those lessons and move away from being on the business side as someone who now fully identifies as an artist, with a capital A, and I'm ready to sort of dedicate my life to creativity as an active participant and peer, not just as a supporter and advocate, which I know I will also always be. And I think that's something I had to do for myself. I think I had to sort of prove to myself or see myself slowly in real time to get to this place. It is unusual. It is it's a choice of a life path, but it feels like living to me. This is what I want my life to feel and live and look like. And I'm ready to run towards that. And I'm lucky in that I have had a certain amount of success throughout my life in all these different endeavors and, all with pockets of failures, varying degrees. But I feel bolstered to continue to take sort of big swings. And if I'm not going to do that, that's just not the kind of life I want to live. So yes, I'm moving away from the industry side and doubling down.
It's amazing. It's really amazing. And you talk about how the business kind of gave you the confidence, sitting in the room with those
Yes.
people gave you the confidence to go ahead. But how did you find the confidence in your own art? One of the things that I talk about a lot is we have that critic. And writing
Mm-hmm.
through, we talk about this. You have this critic that's sitting on your shoulder and whispering in your ear, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
you're not as good. You can't do this, whatever." And how you get rid of that critic. It's something that I struggle with still. what do you do about that critic? And how did you find the courage just to say, you know what? I can sing. And this reminds me of a story that was one of my favorite experiences. When I went to see you in London, I don't know if you
Mhm.
remember this, it was your first gig. And afterwards, I threw my arms around you and I said, Lizzy, I didn't know you could sing. Who knew? And you said, I knew.
I did?
You
That was my
did.
response?
Yes, you said, I knew. And I
Wow, what an
love
arrogant
that.
little brat. No.
No, it was being true to yourself, and it was you saying, "You know what? I can sing. I can dance." But how did you believe that?
That's so amazing to hear. That's not even how I think of myself, but that is powerful to hear from you. I empathize and relate to so much about what you're saying with this inner critic. I don't know any creative in any medium who doesn't wrestle with that, right? Like that's just the reality of, living an artistic life. Ira Glass has this really beautiful way of explaining sort of the growth period between your artistic ability in real time and your taste. And he calls it the creative gap. And your journey as an artist is constantly to create things in real time where you're closing the gap and getting closer and closer to the things that you can make that align with your taste. And so for me, I acknowledge that the critic is going to be active in real time, telling me that it's not good enough. It's not quite on the level of the things that I love yet, but I can appreciate my growth in real time. And I think it's okay. I acknowledge that I'm never going to grow out of having an inner critic, that, they're just going to kind of be along for the ride. I can hear it out. I can't take everything it's saying to heart, but ultimately it's just forcing me to want to get closer to executing things that are on the level. And in music, my experience with confidence and courageousness around the music was I wasn't so courageous at the start. Max and I made the music anonymously in secret while I was running the label.
I didn't know that.
So I was making music for the first time in my life completely under the radar. No one knew, just Max and me. He was at dance school at the time and working in restaurants, and I was at the label. And we'd get together in the early mornings and after work. And, we felt like superheroes who lived double lives, where in our private time, we were creating all this music, but no one really knew. And when we decided to put it out, because eventually we had enough music to do that, I was really self conscious coming from the industry side and having not had a foundation of going to art school or going to music school or even, knowing how to play an instrument. And so I kind of convinced Max that we should release the project anonymously because it would give the music a real opportunity to be heard and seen on its own merits, regardless of who I was or had been to the music industry at that time. And I think on a personal, on a creative level, I needed to know that people either liked it or didn't like it, honestly, on its own 2 feet. That was not courageous, but also was kind of necessary for me, I think, to take myself seriously and know whether I had chops or not. And while that sounds like giving a lot of power to an audience, I would say that hand in hand with that was that Max and I were really making music that we loved. And I really believe this about any medium, that at the end of the day, if you really love what you're making or what you're doing, that's the most you can ask for. That's the only W that matters. Once you release something or put it out into the world, it's really out of your control. But if you can stand by something and be like, whether this is a success or failure, whatever that means, I know that I love this thing. That is like the ultimate form of a creative win to me. And so I did feel that way about Miss Mister when we released it. And it meant that every wonderful thing that came from it, every accolade, every TV performance, every festival, every sale, like that all felt like the cherry on top of a sundae that I was already so proud to be a part of. It is much harder for me to feel that way about visual art as a new medium because I can see myself growing in real time. And there's a lot I see in myself and my work that I love and appreciate. But I have yet to hit the thing where I'm in awe or moved by the thing I've made. I haven't yet done that. I can feel myself scratching at the surface of where it's going to go, but I have yet to arrive. But I'm trying not to be too mean or too shameful in the process. I'm trying to kind of learn in public. And I'll know when I make the thing that moves me. And that's kind of what it is to be a creative, to keep taking swings at all these tries. Everything is an effort. It's also subjective. If I think it's a slam dunk, someone else might not. And someone else might be moved by something that I'm not moved by. And I think art and creativity is so special because it is this thread and invitation and play between people's souls. And, we can't connect what lights up on that frequency for both sides or one side. But to put your hand up and participate in whatever you're making is really special. And I really admire that about any artist.
It brings up the question, the inevitable question, certainly when you talk to people in the West
Mm-hmm.
about the market and how important, quote unquote, the market is to you
Sure.
and how do
Yeah.
you respond to it. Interestingly, when I asked this question about the market to people in Asia, and especially people in Cambodia, they say, well, that has nothing to do with anything.
Hmm.
Well, of course, they're coming from a situation where the market doesn't work as efficiently.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
It's not about making money, but here in the West, it's very often when you ask somebody, or are you an artist, unless they are making money doing their art,
Hmm.
they will often say no, regardless of how they're spending their time.
It's fascinating because essentially what we're talking about are almost like the economics of spirituality. Because art and creativity to me is, I wasn't brought up in a religious household. I wouldn't say I'm a particularly religious person, but the more I become artistic and creative, the more spiritually lit up I feel. And I do feel I live a spiritual life in the practice of being an artist. And I think exactly what you're saying. I understand, in the East that it is directly aligned in being a part of a spiritual practice. And I think whether you're making money from your art or not, it doesn't mean you're an artist or not an artist. What you do isn't necessarily who you are, but that's something we've conflated in the West. I do also think that you can make money from being an artist. And, as someone who has a certain taste for life and luxuries and beautiful things and travel, and, I live in New York City, I'm not immune or unaware of or untied to, the hustle economy or making money from what I do. And I will say that my experience in running Neon Gold did give me like business acumen for how best to market myself and take advantage of business opportunities. And while right now my visual art isn't my main source of income, that is something I'm actively working towards. Not because that will be the mark of success, but because what a joy to be lifted if like what I love and what I do are one to one. That is something I've been lucky to get away with in my whole life. And I hope I can continue that. And I am quite clever about making it work. And I feel grateful for that experience on the business side to be able to bring that to what I do and to take myself seriously on the economic side of it. But I really don't think you have to make money from your art to be an artist. And I also think that you can figure out how to do the business side should you want to make money from your art. And there are a million ways to be successful from that standpoint outside of like a gallery system or a book deal. There are just so many ways to be creative and use your creativity.
Exactly. And I know that one of the things that I've learned that has really been fascinating to me as somebody who now runs an international organization,
Hmm.
I'm doing business, right?
Yeah,
I'm running this as a business and realizing how creative you need to be in order to do that. And I've always talked
100%.
a lot about taking your creativity off of the page,
Yes.
off of the easel, and putting it into your life. And when I see the way that you have kind of maneuvered yourself throughout social media, especially, and how you
Mm.
work with social media, so that it's never seemed like a detriment. None of the negative stuff that you hear about with social media have I ever seen really applied to. Maybe I just shield myself from it, but I haven't seen that. But you have amassed such a worldwide following of people who follow not only your music, but now also your art, your fashion. It's the whole Lizzy Plapinger thing. Kind of amazing. And I've wondered, I mean, do you consider yourself an influencer? I mean, how does this whole work?
Well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate you saying that because social media really stresses me out, as I think it does for everyone. I am someone who tends to see glass half full. I call it kind of like permanent Pollyanna syndrome, and I've got it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And for all the evil and dark things about the internet, I love it so much as a place of inspiration. And oh my God, I just can't believe how easy it is to connect with other artists, share how much I love their work, or if I have a question about how they achieved this effect or how they navigated this problem. And I am truly shameless about reaching out to people. I do it all the time. And like really my favorite thing to do is to find, a new piece of art or a new song and reach out directly to the artist and just be like, hey, thank you so much for doing what you do. I came across this today and it really moved me and I can't wait to see what you do next. I send those messages regularly,
Well,
daily.
that's fascinating.
Um,
That's something
and
I'm
that
still
feels
afraid
so
to do.
amazing. But why do you feel that way?
Well, I guess it's part of the imposter syndrome, right? But also part of this idea that people like that are so busy and they'll get this thing, say, who is this person? I
But who
diss
doesn't like
myself on
receiving
their
a compliment? You know what I mean? Like, who doesn't like from anywhere? I don't feel like I'm reaching out as an equal, just as a fan.
yeah.
And if it leads to a greater conversation, sure. But, if someone sent you a message and they said that, it would just make you feel good. It would just make you feel seen. I don't give compliments or say nice things just to say them. I only say
Yeah.
it when I mean it. But I think we lose so many like creative soldiers in this world by basically just not fanning the flame or shining a light on them. And so whenever I'm earnestly feeling something, I just want to make sure that they know it, because I think so many people don't see that in themselves, or they don't get that feedback. And some people obviously do, they're already a success. To your point, exactly. Like, maybe they care absolutely 0% about the message I sent. And that's totally fine too. But you never know what your message means to someone and when it reaches them, and right timing, and what friendship comes from it, or what you learn, or did they become a collaborator down the line. There is an element of this of like, if I continue to share these things that I feel about people, I love the idea of 5 years down the line, maybe I re-meet that person in a different context and reality, and then we reconnect, and then there's a tangible history of a conversation we had or a message I sent years ago. And
Yeah.
there's kind of like proof, a timestamp of, I have loved what you have been doing for so long, and I sent this when I had nothing to lose, and it wasn't about an end goal.
That's wonderful. That's really fabulous. It's a great way to look at it. Absolutely.
I didn't really answer your question about social media, but I will just say I try not to be too precious. I try to share things in real time. I try to not take it too seriously and just really make it a place for fun. There's a lot of poison in the world. If whatever I am being or doing or sharing is some form of like medicine or an invitation to someone else to do or be whoever they want to be, that feels good. Like, that's about as serious a degree to which I take it. But it's challenging as I've been moving towards different mediums. And some people love that, some people don't. But my dream version of how my life develops, how my art practice develops, is that LPX is an all encompassing multimedia holistic artist project. And people never know what I'm going to do next, but they know that it's me because it has my thumbprint on it. That's what I would love. I look at someone like a David Byrne or Bjork, who just seamlessly move between mediums, and it just doesn't matter. No one cares if it's an album or a play or a bike rack for New York City or a book. It just feels like them. That only comes from knowing yourself and being consistent and doubling down on what you like and your value system and who you are. But that is where I would like this journey to end or arrive at. Trying to share that in real time, hopefully at least lays track for that.
Yeah, and that also is part of, I think, the answer to what was going to be my next question, which was how you moved from music to visual arts. And I might have gotten this wrong, but I remember first you were painting furniture, but
Yeah.
also there was stuff about clothes, and you were kind of finding your visual sense through clothing and then furniture, and now you're actually painting. To a lot of people, that seems like you can't be good at both, right?
Yes. And who's to say that I am?
But how did you say, you know what? I'm going to do this.
Honestly, it just feels like I'm letting curiosity take the wheel. That's kind of where I'm at. When I was a kid, like, dancing was really the thing. That's what I wanted to do. And I remember doing studio art in high school. And I didn't love school as a teenager. That was really challenging for me. And ASL, where, we went to school, had a really wonderful arts program. Totally fell in love with that class and my teacher, and doing AP studio art made me feel like there was something that I could really click with, and went to college with the intention of doing that. Now, that took a back seat when music sort of took over.
It's
Music,
funny because now, as you say that, I remember you taking AP studio art.
yeah, for 2 years, my whole life.
Actually, it was art. It was visual art that came
Yeah.
first, that and dance.
But dance, right, is an extension of music. I definitely learned music so much through my dad and through my older brother, who I thought was the coolest person on the planet. And I just wanted to be just like him. Dance became an extension with which I could like honor music and this thing that I absolutely loved. But it was really rooted in music. And, when you love one thing, it doesn't replace your potential for love for another thing. It just sort of expands. And so it makes sense to me that I have such a foundation in my love of music through dance and art through that time in high school. With Miss Mister and LPX, I got to do a version of visual art around music, and that, we would collaborate on photographs and album art and videos, and it kind of gave me a taste for different mediums. But it is interesting, and this moment feels in some ways like a return to form, something that I had on the back burner for so long. And it was really in COVID, during quarantine, that I started painting my furniture really just as an activity to do out of boredom. And it became something I love so much that took on a life of its own. I started doing it for local vintage stores around me, for myself to learn in real time, for them to sell pieces that they were having trouble to sell at the time. That's me making the economics work for me. And from there, I was like, I wonder what it's like once I take away the blueprint of a 3D structure. And what is it like when I go to canvas? And then I move to canvas. And then as I'm painting now, my relationship to color is paramount. That's such a channel for me. I'm realizing more and more that my relationship to color is aggressively rooted in fashion. When I put together an outfit, that version of color combining lays a lot of track for me in terms of what I end up putting on a canvas.
Yeah, I've never known anyone who had such an incredible sense about color and the
Thank you.
importance of color. I remember your hair was a different color all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's always been something that is at the core of what you do, even in music.
Yeah.
I wonder where that comes from.
I don't know. I don't know in terms of like, like a genealogy or passed down. My dad's mother, Mimi, was someone who meant a lot to me. And she lived in a bright yellow house and she had a red polka dot kitchen and she always sort of wore yellow, orange, and red. And I can definitely point to her and think of her as a strong color influence early on. But my relationship to color has always felt quite profound. I think before I even had the language to even share that, for me, it feels connected to wholeness and spirituality and joy being kind of one of my greatest value systems. I think that color is this vehicle with which you can communicate. It's a language beyond language that is imprinted on all of us and we all have access to. And the more I dive into color, the more I fall in love with it. And it just feels like a language I was born with that I understood before I even learned.
I really love that. I also wonder if it has something to do with growing up in London where everybody wears black.
Oh my God. And it's great all the time.
Yeah,
I mean, I literally didn't know it could be cold and sunny until I went to Vassar. I
that's
was like,
right.
huh.
Right. There's color in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love wearing it around. And I really believe in the power of joy rebellion. And for me, the way to do that is to sort of wear my heart on my sleeve, literally. But I feel like that relationship is one I'll spend a lifetime fully unpacking. And it's something I feel like to crack the code on how it relates formally in like an artistic statement type way. But I know that that is the crux of so much of what I am and believe in. And will be a guiding force in practice in whatever medium I'm in.
And I know that as soon as I started to see your visual art, from the very first I could say, oh, that's Lizzy.
Oh,
It was
thank you
like you
for saying
immediately,
that.
well, I think it's true because you have this connection to color
Mm,
and joy.
mhm.
And you see that in your art. You already found your voice, your kind of artistic visual voice. It was just waiting to be put on canvas.
Thank you for saying that. I do feel there's something special about painting, and I wonder if you feel this way with writing. There's no medium. There's no one that you're working through. There's nothing between your hand and the page, your hand and the canvas. And how amazing it feels to have your hand work as a mirror to yourself. And I had never experienced that. Even in music, I hadn't experienced that because I was always working with a producer, or it's passing through the hands of a mixer, or it's passing through the ears of a masterer. It just has to run through so many loops. Collaboration is beautiful. There's a lot to be gleaned from that. And I still love that. It is something I've come to really appreciate about painting, that there's no one in between me and what it is.
For writing,
Powerful.
a lot of people who just write directly onto the computer, most people do that.
Mm-hmm.
But my poems and even my novels, a 200-page novel, I write longhand.
Yeah, that's
So the
beautiful.
first draft is in a notebook, and then the first edit is typing it into the computer. But
Oh,
there's
I love
something
that.
about that connection with the paper.
Yes.
I can see what you're saying. Yeah.
It's also, I mean, that in and of itself is a visual practice too. I journal almost every day when I wake up. There is such a powerful connection between our hand and, a writing material, pen, pencil, and the page, and the act of physically moving your body and living and breathing the words as you're writing them. And it forces you to think slowly about your ideas in order to put them on the page. And I just think that's so powerful. Bridget Riley is a painter who I really, really love. And she has some quote about how the tip on your pencil has an eye in and of itself that you don't even see. And
Mm.
I think that that can translate for writing as well. I love that we're almost following where the pencil is taking us, but it's this secret relationship between what's in you and the page that's happening. And you're the medium through which this is processing. I think that's epic.
Yeah, there's a connection for me between writing with a pencil and now writing through, we have our magic pencil. But whenever I started a new novel,
Mm-hmm.
I would get a new notebook and a new pen.
Mm-hmm.
And that was part of the
The
ritual where I was
ritual.
saying to
Yeah.
myself, and that became a big part of writing through.
Mm-hmm.
How do you create a place where you could go to that creative part of your brain? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that for me, the pen for writing through, the magic pencil, those are talismans that
Totally.
take you to another place. Do you have a ritual that you do before you sit down to write? You stand in front of the easel?
think I've tried to figure out a couple different versions of what a routine looks like. And even figuring out like the best order of how I orchestrate my morning is incredibly frustrating in that, like, I've yet to crack the code. But I do believe in this process of creativity and creation as part of ritual. There are certain brushes I'm attached to, and I have created a room. My studio room is a very special place to me. I am only in here when I am creative. I never spend time in here otherwise. I mean, it is kind of a sacred place for me. And I really am just excited to get up and get after it. I do wake up and I usually journal for a little bit. And then I try and hit the canvas as soon as humanly possible. Before I go to sleep, I write a short list of the things I want to do as soon as I wake up tomorrow. And that feels really great because it means that when I'm up, I'm not thinking in real time, what do I have to do? I already have my go instructions essentially. And it means I can get to work as soon as possible. For me, I am still juggling a few other jobs. So I'm trying to, in this moment, get up as early as possible so that I can paint for the first 5 or 6 hours of my day before I really have to like be on email, go for meetings, do whatever else I have to do. And so when I have that list, I love knowing that I can hit the ground running, and there's no question about it. And I have built a literal apartment of inspiration. And it is this creative cocoon. And something that definitely affects sometimes what I make, how I feel about myself, is putting on an outfit. Have you ever read Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert?
No.
It is a really digestible, sweet book on creativity, and basically talks about that anyone and everyone can be creative. And there are a number of ways, and I would highly recommend it. It's very sweet. And she has a small moment or section in the book where she talks about getting dressed. And for her, she was like, I love getting dressed up because I feel like I'm actively seducing creativity to me through the act of putting together an outfit. And I just, when I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, this resonates so hard because that is how I feel, especially as I talked about that relationship to color. And it's embarrassing to admit out loud, but truly one of my favorite things to do is put on an amazing outfit and then like take the long way to go get coffee because I love just wearing the outfit around New York City. And so often in that process, I'm like singing into my phone and writing lyrics or taking pictures or thinking about projects. And there is a connection between all those things. Not to harp on this book, Big Magic, too much, but another one of the more core elements of the book is she talks about that we almost don't create these projects or ideas, that they are dropped to us. And sometimes, we can't execute every vision, every idea, but, when it doesn't find a home in us, sometimes it moves on to another person. And so it's not uncommon for a friend, another creative or artist, to write the book that you were thinking about, to make the painting that you were thinking about doing, to create the fashion. It's uncanny how often that happens.
Mm.
And she, sort of prophesizes that that's just kind of the nature of the idea. The idea is bigger than whatever the person is, and it will always wait till it finds the right place for it to be fully realized.
It's a good thing to remember when you answer the question that I ask people a lot, and I'm now going to ask you. What do you just say to someone when they say, oh, I'm not creative? How do you respond to that?
I just don't believe it's true. I think that comes down to what people understand creativity as. I think we have been taught or told or believe that creativity is attached to the arts, right? And I understand that. So people think about it as, if I'm a businessman or a data analyst or whatever it is, I'm not a painter, I don't take photographs, or I don't make music. But the truth is, how you live your life is creative. How you relate to information, how you decide to tell a stranger a story on the train, how you see the world around you. I just really, really believe there are a million creative choices in a day outside of just like the arts as we understand and know them. And people just don't really give themselves enough credit for the already creative ways in which they are living their life. Even the decision to get married, the decision to have a child, the decision to build a home, the decision of how to make more money when you don't have enough, the decision of where to spend your money, the decision of what food you're buying in a grocery store. Those are all creative decisions because those are decisions that help impact how you live your life, how you connect to others, what you're creating, but they are all acts of that.
I completely agree. And as we're coming into this 10th anniversary season of Riding Through, somebody asked me, what kind of world would you like to see and kind of be a part of creating in the next 10 years?
Mm.
And what I keep coming up with is that wouldn't it be wonderful if everyone believed the meaning of creativity as what you just said?
Mm-hmm.
Because what that would lead to is that every time we have a decision to be made, even something as small as what am I having for lunch?
Hmm.
Or as big as do I get married? Or what is the
Yeah.
work that I try? That is a conscious, creative decision.
Your life is your greatest creative piece.
That's right. And wouldn't it be wonderful? And how different a world would that be if everybody believed in their own ability to be creative in that way?
It would be amazing because I feel like, all the things that are the darkest about this world come from a place of lack, come from a place of fear, come from a place of
Exactly.
insecurity. And I think with a certain amount of creative support and creative reflection and creative identity, people could find more of a rudder within themselves. And then that's contagious.
And, people ask me how I feel about AI. And maybe I'm going to be proved wrong, but to me, what makes us human and makes us different from AI
Mhm.
is our creativity.
I agree. The AI conversation is genuinely so fascinating to me. And again, I understand all the concerns and fears about it. I'm sure all of that is incredibly valid. But again, seeing the world through my Pollyanna lens, I'm excited about it. And if this thing is smarter than we are or will ever be, then it will already know that to be emotion led and security. And I wonder, will it be a champion to alleviate all these things that we should be better than? I like the idea of making AI an ally, making it a partner in our lives, invite it to the creative process, but in a way where we both elements need each other. I've been trying to toy with it a little bit because I don't want to be scared of this thing.
I'm actually scared of it. I've thought about trying to fool around with it and I go,
Well, I'll tell you a tip. I would say try it. Try Chat GBT. I've been calling Chat GBT Chatty to make it my little bud, to make it my friend, my in studio helper, if you will. And, you can go slow. I think, getting used to asking it a question. I had fruit flies the other day in my kitchen. I was like, oh God, what's the best way to get rid of fruit flies? And I was like, you know what? Instead of going to Google, I'm going to go to Chatty and see what Chatty has to say. If you maybe take baby steps towards using it as a faster Google, it can help you make a business plan. It could help you build a website. In so many ways, it could really be used as such an amazing tool for creatives specifically who are better at the creative side than they are on the business end, like, cross your T's, dot your I's type stuff. But I also think, even for you, Sue, like, do you remember Exquisite Corpses?
No.
It's from a really long time ago, but they used to do it in these art salons where someone draws something at the top, it's on a folded piece of paper, and then you mark the end of where your drawing begins, and someone receives the drawing and they continue drawing where they just see the top marks. It would
Oh,
be like writing a story where you wrote one sentence and then AI wrote one sentence. You wrote a sentence, AI wrote one sentence. And maybe that would be fun. And maybe it would be garbage, but maybe it would lead you to a new place. And then you're not saying you're better than it or it's better than you, but can it be this thing that you pass the ball back and forth with? I just don't want to let my fear get in the way of something that could be really wonderful. And maybe it's not going to be wonderful, but I don't want to ever be ruled by fear.
well, and that's you all over. I mean, if there was a perfect way to sum up this conversation, that's it. You don't want to let fear rule you and stop you
No.
from doing things that could be wonderful.
The easiest way to make fear dissipate is curiosity. I think curiosity trumps fear every time.
And what I always say, the word no is the death knell of creativity. You
Yes.
just always have to say yes, and then
Hmm.
you figure it out.
And
Yeah.
nobody knows everything, I always say I don't know what I don't know. And and that's to me like very comforting.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I just want to thank you so very, very much. This has been fascinating, and it's really been so much fun for me just to have you one on one all to
Yeah, I
myself.
love it, Sue. Thank you for having me. You're such an important person in my life, and I respect you so much as a human
Mm,
and a creative and a writer and a mother and a friend. And I feel
thank
really
you.
grateful that you and I have found each other in this world,
Well,
and that we have built our own friendship outside of just family ties. It's very special to me.
me too. Me too. I'm really glad to hear you say that. That's great. Before I sign out, is there anything else that you want to talk about?
Oh my gosh. Go creativity. Don't let your inner critic rule you. Lead with curiosity. And should you want to find me out in the world, you can find me online as LPX.
Okay, LPX. Okay, Lizzy. Thank you so much. It's
Thank you,
been
Sue.
great.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. And if you liked this, please do subscribe and give us a review. That really helps us a lot. If you want more information about Writing Through, who we are and what we do, please check out our website, www.writingthrough.org, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn. We have a truly incredible season for you this year. Next month, I will be joined by Mr. Dara Holt, Chief Executive of Far Performing Arts based in Siem Reap, Cambodia. He is an incredibly inspiring and interesting man, so I'm sure you're not going to want to miss our chat. Here's a little taste.
I refuse to fear. It's not like I am not afraid. No, everybody is afraid. It's human nature to fear the unknown, but I am empowered to refuse to be afraid.
See you then.